welcome to my channel. Today you are going to learn how to make a Harley Quinn Suicide Squad t-shirt. Here it is from the back and in the front. Now you're going to need a few items and some time, and make sure you always cover up your space. That is the main important thing, and make sure that you pre-wash your blank t-shirt before you start working on this, because the fabric paint tends to stick a lot easier when it's already pre-washed beforehand. Now, what I recommend is that you wash it in hot water in case it's a brand new shirt. That way it shrinks to the size it's going to be. That way you're not disappointed when the shirt comes out. And whenever you throw it into the dryer, do not use fabric softener or anything like that, because it's not going to let the fabric dye or paint, whichever one you decide to use, stick to it very well, and you're going to come out with a very strange color looking shirt. Now, here's how you do it. Okay guys, so the first thing that you are going to do is, if you have the long sleeve t-shirt, put the long sleeve t-shirt up to your arm and measure it and cut it about to where your elbow is. Now be sure to not cut your skin, and just put a tiny little slit so you know exactly where to cut it at. Now that you have your slit, you're going to finish cutting it and then fold the t-shirt all the way over in half to the other side, to the other sleeve. That way whenever you put it on, it'll be completely even, and that way you also don't have to remeasure it, as shown right here. And then just line it up, make sure the whole shirt is completely folded over, and then just begin cutting. Now that you have your sleeves cut, you need to get out your masking tape and be able to mark where you're going to be putting the blue on the sleeve. Now what I did is that I went at it at an angle, since my shirt kind of goes down at an angle. That way it turns out even when I'm wearing the actual shirt. Now you get out your marker, your blue one, and then begin coloring. And the reason why I chose a marker instead of a dye for this demonstration is simply because it gives it a more dirty type of look, and I can also control exactly where it goes. And I was currently out of blue dye at the time, and I prefer the Sharpie method myself, but it's up to you. Either way, you can, if you want to choose to do the dye method, then just mark it with the tape. That way you know exactly where you're going to put it, and follow the instructions and just dip it in and let it dry. And make sure you flip the other side and do the other side as well. After you remove your tape, you are going to cut another strip, or you can use the same strip, either way, and you're going to line it up with the blue line, because you want to put the red lines after the blue line, so it's a lot easier to just line it up on the blue line. And I put an extra piece on each end, that way whenever I flip it over I can see exactly where I marked it in the front, so I can put it in the same spot in the back. Now one strip of tape was too big for what I was trying to get to fit the small lines onto my shirt. So what I decided to do was cut one strip in half. That way I can line it up, and that way the lines are thin enough, and that way I can actually make bolder lines on the shirt, as you can see here. And I also made sure to have extra ends. That way I can fold it over so I can match it up on the back as well. Next is to get your red fabric paint and start painting your shirt. And the method that I used for painting was mainly splotching. First I tried the up and down method, or side to side, and then that didn't seem to be working too well, so I ended up needing to splotch it like you would with a sponge paintbrush. But the splotching method seemed to work so much better, and it absorbed into the fabric so much easier. I actually ended up doing about 2 layers, that way whenever I wash it, it doesn't bleed through. Now after I lined up the tape on the other side, I began just doing the same method, sponging the other side and doing about 2 layers, that way it would seep all the way through the fabric. Now in between layers I did let it dry. It took about 4 hours in between to dry each layer. Now after that paint has dried, I decided to work on the other side. I figured waiting in between is best, that way I don't accidentally smear it or smudge it. So what I did here is the same thing with cutting. I folded it back over and make sure that it was all even and lined up. That way the lines will match up to the other side. Now just line up your tape to the other side. That way it all matches up. Make sure you cut the strips in half like you did before. Now notice that it's going to be on the back side of your shirt. So what you're going to do is that whenever you flip it over, you can tape it then. That way you don't have to later. Now that you have it all taped, you can begin painting the other side as well. I painted in between the lines. It made it so much easier for lining up. And remember, I did use the splotching method, and I also put about 2 layers on there. That way it'll efficiently stay. And then whenever it's dry after a few hours, then you can start on the other side and begin painting it. After I removed the tape, I put the t-shirt on. That way I can measure where I'm going to be painting on the front. It's so much easier to do it then. That way you can get a more accurate of where exactly it's going to be laying when you wear the shirt, other than laying it down on the floor and then spreading it out. I found that to be so much easier. And then I'll line up the sides to make it as a baseball jersey type tee. Now you can begin painting, and I ended up doing the splotching method here as well. So it ended up so much easier, and I did about 3 layers of this simply because this is a more bigger area, so I wanted to make sure that I covered everything and make sure that it was all thick and that it wouldn't fade out. Now for taping up the back, what I did was, since my shirt was white, I can see where I painted in the front, so I was able to tape it easier and I could feel it going across. So it's much easier to tape the back after taping the front, and then you finish painting the back as well. And as I said before, I put about 3 layers on here to keep it from fading. Now one thing I am going to add is after about 24 to 48 hours after you let the paint dry on your shirt, you can either iron it for a good little while to help the heat setting to make the paint stick in, or you could turn the shirt inside out and throw it into the dryer for 30 minutes. I chose the dryer method because I really rather not iron unless I have to, and I didn't also want to burn the shirt. Now you're going to use your transfer paper to transfer the lettering onto the shirt. Now how I got the correct lettering was I went on Google and just typed in Daddy's Little Monster, and the picture of it came up, so I put it on Microsoft Word, and then I just printed it out onto the transfer paper after I sized it up really good, and then all you do is cut it all the way around. That way you can make sure that it properly gets onto the shirt. Then I ironed it on there. And then after waiting a good few minutes while it's cooling down, I decided to cut into the shirt. That way I can give it the Harley Quinn more look. And what I did to help with the uneven cuts is I used the razor edge on the end of my scissors. That way I could cut the shirt into spots and make it seem more real-like and ripped. And then once it finishes cooling, you just take it right off. How you create the shirt. Now, there is one thing I would highly suggest. After you create the shirt, let it sit for at least 2 to 3 days after you iron everything on. and then throw it into the washer, but turn it inside out and make sure you have it on a cold water setting, like the coldest water setting you have for your washer. And also, be sure to set it on quick wash, because the more the water sits there, the more it's going to ruin the shirt and the material and everything that you just did, and you don't want to spend so much time on the shirt and be like, oh no, what did I do? That's not a very good thing. And then when you go to throw it in the dryer, make sure you do it immediately. No fabric softener, same as before. And about 30 minutes should do, maybe 20. It depends on how thick your shirt is. And one other thing I do recommend is that if your lettering on your shirt starts to like chip off or anything like that, you can actually use a fine point Sharpie to touch it up and work around the edges and make the print darker. That's actually what I did, because my shirt came out a little bit chipped and things like that, because I guess I didn't leave the iron on long enough. So that's one way to keep it on your shirt, and that way it touches it up and keeps it fresh. Now, make sure you wash this before you go and take it out anywhere or wear it anywhere, because it could bleed onto other stuff. Or if you use the fabric paint, you'll notice that it'll feel stiff, but washing it will help it. Just make sure it's in cold water, and don't use any detergent that has bleach or anything of that nature. The best thing to use is actually kids' laundry detergent, like the little baby laundry detergent. I have 2 children, so I just use their detergent, and I washed it by itself as well. So I don't know if it's going to bleed onto other fabrics or not. I just preferred to wash it by itself just to be safe. Now, I hope you guys enjoy this video, and I hope to see some responses. And if you ended up making a tutorial on this shirt, or want to post a picture of using my method and what it came out in the outcome, I would love a picture. That is always great. Also, if you have any other tips on other things that you could do, or to help other viewers, or even myself, I don't mind the criticism. I love to learn, and I don't mind getting any tips from anybody else. Thank you, and if you really like this video, please hit like and subscribe.